Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Annihilation. So, for those of you that are to enjoy stuff like Stargate or to possibly enjoy WandaVision and all those kinds of shows, I'll give you Annihilation. So, this, of course, is a story about a woman who is to realize her husband is to come back to her one day after a year of being gone. And all of a sudden, after Lena is to re-meet up with her husband, who is to be able to not really tell her anything of why he was gone for so long, we then have Lena herself forced into going on to a mission herself and having to go through this kind of bubble that is to be inside Earth, or what they call the shimmer. And after we go on and go into the shimmer, at some points people's lives are at risk because they're just unfamiliar with this kind of new surroundings, this new world, and also just a visually interesting film. I thoroughly enjoyed it for its visuals. It was just like, man, like something about this is so creative. And I would love it at some point if they could have gone on and have possibly done a whole like series about this. Like not just one film, like a whole show. Like I would be sold on a show. Or really if they would have gone on and done anything with this past this movie. I think I would have been sold. It would have been really fascinating just to see them consistently go inside this the shimmer, but again with the way that this movie ends, yeah, like they kind of go on and they just kind of leave it to the fact of like they are to kind of bottle it in one movie. But like, man, I would have been happy for them to have really like stretched this out somehow further, making a sequel or something. They could have done something with this movie, because I think it's worthwhile to have gone and done that. But anyways, so yeah, like there isn't much for me to go on and say. So the shimmer is to be undefined, as well as most of this movie is undefined. The shimmer is to be this bubble where we go on and we find out that there is to be a alligator there, but an alligator with all kinds of uh, like uh, like watered animals like morphed together, or it starts to seem that way. Where all of a sudden we eventually at some point are to possibly see a bear in a later on part of this movie, but a bear that is possibly morphed and lost some of its like facial stuff to where we're just kind of seeing a bone for a face. And we're seeing a very unique bear who is to cry out its own victim. And so I was like, man, that is so that's so eerie and so fascinating, and I'm just so just like, man, this movie did some creative things, and I applaud this movie for its creativity and really for us just being so like vague about this movie. I think the only thing that really like besides stuff that is just kind of like, does this work? Does it not work? The whole thing with Lena having an affair with a guy named Daniel, that to me was just felt like a random thing that they needed to add in to possibly give us some like sex scene. Um, but even that, we really didn't like get a grasp of that. But still, like I just think that they were just going on and like, well, like we have to say that Kane has been gone for so long that at some point Lena had either moved on or has always moved on. Um, because Kane at some point has never really been in this girl's life. So Lena just needs someone eventually when Kane is never really there. So, yeah. So, going on, I think it's about that time to just go to the double five time territory. So, where can you conveniently see Annihilation conveniently for free? So, uh, besides what I'm going to say here, I'll give you a freer option. I think it'll probably be on Epics right now. If you go on and you are to probably have a free trial with Epics or something like that, you can try Epics out to see what kind of content they have. But I'll give you another option. So, going on to the Google Play Store, you can search the words TV and then Crush, and you'll find an app that'll have a logo that'll say HD Movies with a kind of king crown off to the side. Download that app and you'll be able to watch this movie in HD for absolutely free. There might be some ads in between and stuff like that, but you'll be able to see this movie for absolutely free. Uh, other other stuff that I would recommend you, like I would normally recommend through any number of other apps, so or a number of other reviews, so you can go through and just see what else that I can offer you as far as going on and seeing something for absolutely free. But that's the quick and easy recommendation that I would, because I watched it through there, to give to you. So now, with that said, let's just go on to spoilers because I've kind of teed this movie up. It's an interesting like alternate world kind of thing, but in an alternate world that is bottled inside our own. Um, because we go on and we just weirdly find out one day that this bubble had been created from this lighthouse and has just expanded, and so like they have to go on and figure out how to just like explore this world and see what's going on here, and they're starting to see things like blend in between one another, and it's so cool. So check it out. Check out Annihilation. So with that said, let's double five this bad boy up. Let's go in further explaining this movie because I think it's about that time to just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this movie. So the very first beginning of this, like there's a lot of sciencey stuff that ends up having to get explained in this film. And so really a lot of the sciencey stuff just over my head at some points. But like I'm gonna try to rein in as best as I can. So in the beginning of this film we have Lena, who's this biologist. So she's going on and explaining to this class here that at some point there is to be this one cell that just starts out. And then all of a sudden this one cell becomes two cells, and two cells becomes three cells, and three cells become, and so on and so forth. Cells become 84 cells and whatever. And so Lena is to explain that over a mass amount of years that we are all technically cells that have just eventually been a thing that has evolved over time. And so Lena is to concentrate on talking to her class about cancer because technically that's like another kind of, so she wants to go on and eventually do like a whole thing about cancer for this story and how like at some point like cancer could kill somebody, which that's kind of an interesting approach in a science way of like how is it that a thing that just kind of grows inside you just decides to just like figure out a way to kill you. It's weirdly fascinating because of course there have been, I think, a movie or a show before that has like broken that down, where it's just like, why is it that something that grows inside you just wants to kill you off? Like, wouldn't it want to like keep its host like alive? But anyways, so Lena is to leave her class, and so we have a guy uh, who, of course, is to uh, who I needed a second here to try to get this right. Um, we had Daniel who goes on and is to see Lena and like, well, hey, it's been a long time since I've seen you, and you haven't gone on to any lunches. And Lena's like, well, I've just been consistently working on this paper that I had, or this book that I had. And so Daniel's like, well, hey, I'll work and no play. So Daniel is saying it's like, well, hey, how about you come to my house and like we'll go on and like they'll be friends there and we can just kind of have you like decompress and just have some fun. We find out that Lena had been sleeping with this guy Daniel before, and so we don't really know how honest he's really being here, or maybe this is code for something to just say like, hey, if you want to come over by my house. Because later on in the film, some time ago, Lena had slept with Daniel and consistently had this affair while Kane was away through military. And so Daniel and Elena are kind of thinking it's like, well, do you think that Kane has like figured out that you're having this affair? And Lena's like, well, I don't know, but this is a mistake. I don't think I can do this anymore. So Lena is to mention that she isn't going to go to Daniel's place because instead she wants to paint our bedroom or her bedroom, as she used to correct herself. So Lena is to go on and start painting her bedroom, and all of a sudden Kane just appears out of nowhere. And Lena is very confused. Lena then goes on and is to start asking Kane, it's like, well, hey, where have you been for the last year? Like, what country did they speak? Uh, like, like what part of the world were you at? And Kane is like, I don't know. I don't know. I I really just don't know. And so Lena is asking Kane, it's like, well, how did you get back here? And he's like, I don't know. Like I just saw you and I'm here. So Lena is just so baffled and confused. But then we turn around and all of a sudden Kane is like feeling very ill to the point of him needing to be escorted by this ambulance to be rushed to this hospital. So all of a sudden Lena is to be sedative or sedative. Is that even a word? She's to be like put to sleep as this ambulance door is to be opened, and Lena's like, "What's going on?" And she's to be sedative, and she's to be knocked out with drugs. And so Lena is to pass out, and when she wakes up, she's all of a sudden in this compound where she goes on and she starts talking to Dr. Ventress. And so in the very beginning of this, uh, we have Lena who is talking to Lomax, and Lomax is Benedict Wong here. So Wong is going on and asking Lena, it's like, well, hey, where is everyone else? Like in this experiment, like what happened to everybody, and so on and so forth. And so Lena's like, well, I don't know. So we already know that Lena is going to go into this project. We already know that via the early part of this movie and the breakdown of all of it. So Dr. Ventress is to go on and start asking Lena a bunch of questions, asking Lena about her husband and what he had said, And then after like Lena is like, I'm done like answering your questions, it's like now you need to go on and you need to answer my questions also. So Lena is talking to Dr. Ventress and have come to find out Kane's body, like all of his organs are failing all at the same time. And it seems that Kane is probably going to die soon. So, like, they can't tell what's going on. It's just very odd. So, we have Dr. Ventress, who is to tell Lena that she is just kind of stuck here now because she knows too much. And so Dr. Ventress takes Lena to then like tell her what's going on. So Ventress tells Lena that there had been randomly this religious or extraterrestrial event that created this shimmer bubble that all of a sudden more and more just started to grow over time. And this shimmer bubble was to go on to continue to expand, and there's nothing they can do about it. And so they've just decided to put certain teams and have them go inside the shimmer to try to either understand it or to try to uh, like stop it or something. Just try to go on and do experiments upon it to try to figure things out. So at first they just sent a bunch of special ops people, aka Kane, to go on and go into this mission. And so this time around they're going to go on and try to send scientists to go on into this shimmer to eventually try to figure things out. So we have like the lead up at some point where Kane is talking to Lena, and like Kane can't really tell much to Lena about his mission. And so Kane is just telling Lena, it's like, well, hey, if you look up at the stars, you're gonna go on and like see the same stars that I will. And Lena's like, what kind of cryptic bullshit is that? It's like, what do you think? I'm like pining away, like desperately looking up at the stars, hoping that that you and I will see the same stars. And Kane's like, yeah, come on. Like, so, like, and we have both Lena and Kane who are both like talking about God and how like Lena can go on and say that there's a possibility that scientifically Lena could stay the exact same way that she is at this moment forever, that she could be immortal, and like there's a whole scientific thing to like support that. And there could just be some mistake where like in the universe where Lena, or in the world or whatever, where all of a sudden Lena is just to stop aging as if it was a mistake. And so Kane is like, well, I'd like that mistake. So that way she'd stay the same age for all of her life. Because they talk about aging and stuff like that. So they go on and they talk about how like God can also be a person that could hear you talking right now, talking about him in a positive or negative way. And so like there's just a bunch of interesting things, a bit of dialogue. And so Kane is to go on his mission, and he ends up having to go a day earlier. And Lena's like, well, wait a minute. Like, we had like a whole day planned where we were going to go to this trip, and then you were going to leave afterwards. And Kane's like, well, I'm sorry. I have to go now. So Kane goes off on his mission to be gone for a year. So Lena is to decide after she is to meet a bunch of these girls who are eventually going on this mission. We have it to where Lena is like, you know what? I think I want to go to this mission too. I think I owe it to my husband Kane to go on this mission also. Plus, Lena has had 7 years in the military, and so she does have experience like in combat and so on and so forth because she was in the army. So Lena is to kind of hear a lot of these other girls and hear their expertise in their field. And so Lena is to say that I'm a biologist, and they're like, yeah. So the other girls, both Cass and Anya and Josie were to have a bid going of who Lena actually was. Lena never really goes on and tells any of the other girls that she was to like be with the previous man that had went on one of these missions, and it's actually a good thing that she did not tell anybody, because Ventress was to say, it's like, well, yeah, that was a good idea to not tell anybody that you like were to have been on on this mission, going to like have seen Kane do this mission beforehand. So, anyways, so all the girls eventually go on into this shimmer, and we have it where they're going along, and they start to see that there is this big massive plant that is to like grow. And Lena is like, man, this is really unusual. Like, this plant is just kind of like combining all these plants together and just growing as one thing. Very odd. So all of a sudden we have Josie, who is, of course, like buying uh, this little boat, this little boat shack, as it seems that they're going to go on and grab these boats and start like heave hoeing. So Josie all of a sudden is to be grabbed by something that we don't really quite see. And all of a sudden we have Lena, who's like diving in the water after her to try to figure out like okay, what's going on here. So they end up luckily pulling Josie out with any real injury, to all of a sudden have us notice that there is to be uh, this this alligator or this crocodile coming out of this spot, and it's a very like albino looking alligator or crocodile. It's like a very like white, and so it's kind of like, okay, that is very odd. So we have this. I'll call it like a gator, and for whatever reason, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. So this gator goes on and is to start like chomping away and trying to attack a number of these people. And so it seems that Lena is to shoot this thing down, but before she shoots it down, she realizes like the mouth inside of this thing is so unique. So we go on and they open this mouth, and they keep it open because Anya is to try to keep this as open as long as it can. And so they're looking inside and they're just like, man, this thing, it's just like like it has all kinds of different teeth. It has like shark teeth and stuff inside of it. And so like, so wait a minute, like are all the fish just like are all the animals just combining together? Is that what's happening here? As if like every single like amphibian is all to have like combined things together. Is that what's going on? So they go on and they just take a sample of it and just continue to go on. So the one thing that's kind of also interesting is when they like set up for camp, because once they go through the shimmer, all of a sudden they have like this huge memory loss of them even setting up for camp, and that they had supposedly lost a certain number of food that's like 4 days worth of food, and they didn't realize they've been like doing this for 4 days already. So, but then that leads to them finding the flower and them finding the alligator and so on and so forth. So we go on here and it seems that nobody is quite dead yet. So that's the great thing. So we then go on and have uh, these women going on and finding these uh, the this video, because they're to go to this kind of like little hangar place that I guess the special ops people were to go on and just have a a place where they were to be on their own, to have as like a camp. So we have at one point where Lena is to notice that they were putting up like things to have guys stand watch. So Elena's like, well, yeah, we should probably do that too, just in case like something happens here. So they also notice that there is some SD card to go into some camcorder for them to see this video. So they all of a sudden are to see this video, and we have Kane who is to cut a guy's uh, like chest open, and so the chest, of course, is to be opened, and come to find out we have the intestines just kind of swimming around itself, and it's all like it's a big massive worm going on inside this guy's chest, and they're like, oh my god. And so we have Anya that is just saying that it's some like a camera illusion or camera trick, or it's something with the lighting, and none of those guys can make sense of it, and they're like, oh my god, like something is going on with people's bodies in here, and how long is it before like that all happens to everybody? So at some point we go on and have these characters who are to find this pool, and they notice that there is to be these skeleton remains all like kind of fused into this pool, and they're like, okay, like what exactly is this? And they're like, I don't know, but like this seems very like we start to have Josie, who's really starting to get very uncomfortable with uh, like what's going on here. So like she doesn't want to sleep here, and it's like, well, hey, it's too late. So we go on and we have Josie and the rest of the group who are to go on and sleep for the night. We Before we get to this base, we had a moment where both Lena and both Cass were talking about like them getting here, and how possibly there might be some girls in the group that might not be the most mentally stable. Come to find out, Ventress is to have cancer, and that one of the girls might be like cutting themselves, and that there probably is something like wrong with each one of these characters. So we go on into this story, and Cass and Lena are, of course, to like not really like Lena isn't to divulge that the reason why she's going on this mission is because of Kane, and so Cass, of course, is like, well, like I guess you don't have like a perfect working order life, or otherwise you wouldn't be here. Like if everything was like hunky dory, like you would not be going on this mission, risking your life. So we go on into this story, and so they're at the base, and so they watch the video. The video's over, and so everybody is just kind of very uncomfortable. Everybody's on edge, and so we have Lena who just can't sleep, and so she is to start to talk to Ventress, and so Ventress is talking possibly that all the people here may at some point be like not going on this mission to like to commit suicide, but they might all just self-destruct at some point, because there might be a number of reasons for anybody to have gone on and self-destruct. And Venture starts explaining like stuff about bad marriages, or just uh, like eventually. Let me pause here for a second. Okay. It was just like I kept hear like outside there was just this bird just consistently beep 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 beep, and I'm like, God. So I was just trying to go on and just like, what the heck is that noise? So anyways, so my bad. So and I'm sorry if anybody is to kind of hear consistently a bird chirping in the background. It's not my fault. It's nature. Just beep 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 freaking while I'm talking. So we go on, and all of a sudden they're hearing a noise of a possible animal. We have Lena, who's to realize that there, of course, is to be a fence breach. And so, like, okay, well, do you see anything? So all of a sudden, all the girls start hearing a noise, and so they all decide to start walking out to try to see what the heck that noise is. All of a sudden, Cass is going on, and she's like right by where both Ventress and Lena are. So Cass is just kind of like going on. She's like, okay, like where is this? And so she ends up getting grabbed by it and dragged away by whatever this was, this mutated bear. And so this bear goes on and eventually kills Cass, because Lena is to go into the forest to find her body and tell everybody in the group that she's dead. Because they go on, and after the following night, they all get up and they decide to venture further in to the woods, and then they find her body. So we turn around, and slowly but surely we have even Lena, who is to put her blood under a microscope and realize that her body eventually is mutating. And so everybody's realizing that their time may be up soon. And Venture's mission is that she wants to go on, and she wants to make it to the lighthouse. So she can go on, and like that was her mission throughout this whole thing, is just to make it to the lighthouse. So because the lighthouse was like the first thing that ever was hit by the shimmer, and so she wants to see like how evolved this thing has gotten to be. So now we start to have it where characters are to start to mutate, and we have Josie who's seeing all these plants that are to start to mutate in to look like humans, to where it seems that they're plants, but they're like in a pattern that looks like a human being, and Josie is to realize that there's certain frequencies that are kind of echoing one another, and so these plants are also echoing human DNA. And so it's like, okay, so this is kind of like fascinating. So we start to have characters after Cassie start dropping like flies, because we have at one point, while most of the characters are sleeping here, we have Anya, who I guess is to tie them up and wake them up, and Anya is to find out that Lena's husband was Cain, and Lena is to go on and think that either uh, that they're all gonna die or that they're all gonna kill one another, and or she has like two different theories, and so like she's probably thinking that they're all gonna go crazy and they're gonna start killing one another, because Anya is to say that Lena was the only one that could confirm Cass's death, and so Lena may be lying. And Anya is mentioning that her fingerprints are starting to move and her parts of her hand are starting to move, and she can start to feel that she's starting to mutate. And so all of a sudden, while they're having this discussion, this one-sided discussion, all of a sudden we have this bear that is to be coming through, because this bear is to sound like Cass. And so Anya is like, oh my god, so Cass really isn't dead. And so Anya starts going through, or Anya, I want to say Anya. Anya sounds cool. Anya goes on to think that this is Cass, and instead is to realize that this is a bear attacking Anya. So we go on and we have this bear that makes its way slowly but surely, this deformed, mutated bear that is to make its way into seeing all these girls, and Enya or Lena, who's to be the only one that has her like kind of gag down, she's telling everybody else, hey, don't react to whatever this does. So the bear continues to open its mouth, and we consistently keep hearing, like from this bear, Cass screaming, "Help! Help me!" And so we go on and have Anya, who gets back up and is to start shooting into this bear, and then the bear attacks her, this mutated bear, and is to go on and like rip out the jaw of Anya, killing her. And so now I think we have the bear who ends up going and trying to attack Ventress, and so either Josie or Lena ends up getting this. I think it's Josie who ends up getting this gun and shooting into this bear and kills the bear. So after that craziness, Ventress is like, you know what? I've slept enough. I think I'm going to get out of here. Like, I think the sooner that I get to the lighthouse, the better, because, like, we're all starting to see signs of dementia, and I just need to make it to this lighthouse. And then I think I'll be fine. So, and while, like, Lena, I guess, is to possibly tell this story, we have Lena talking to Lomax, and he's starting to explain, or he's starting to like help us, like re-explain things, to just be like, oh, okay, so like it seems like this girl dead, this girl dead, this girl missing, this girl dead. So like he's trying to give us like this recap, I guess, if we missed something. So but also to just try to like understand what's going on through this story. So, because we go on and Josie is talking to Lena, and she ends up saying, it's like, well, like, I think, like, there's two ways that you guys are wanting to go on and go about this. And Josie is kind of looking at all the plants and whatever, and she's like, and I think I want to go a completely different route. And so Josie starts walking, and the further and further Lena is to try to follow her, all of a sudden Josie is to disappear, because I guess Josie is at some point to just become a plant herself, to where you can no longer tell what she actually is. And so Josie is just to go on and give in to all this. So we now have Lena that is to go on and like realize that she went to the shoreline, and like there wasn't like a bubble to get out of. So Lena decides to go to the lighthouse, because Ventress is there, and like that's the only thing she has really left to do. So Lena goes into this lighthouse and is to see this camcorder there. And so I guess Kane had made this video. So Kane was to make this video and like showcase all these kind of weird imageries of all the stuff that he had possibly seen. And then Kane at one point had gone on and been talking to another Kane. And so Kane is to go on and say that he's like, well, like, I don't know, like, who I am anymore. Like, if I'm Kane or you're Kane, or like, my brain is just like not really there anymore. So Kane is just going on and deciding, it's like, well, but there is one thing I can do. And so Kane takes this grenade and grenades himself and ends his own life. And then the other Kane is to just like look at this camera. And so we have to assume that this other Kane was to be the Kane that Lena eventually saw. And so, like, when Lena finally does finish this story, she makes it back to Kane and asks, like, this Kane, it's like, well, you're not really my Kane, are you? And Kane's like, I don't really know. Like, I don't really think so. And then they hug and they embrace. And both of them have these kind of very bizarre, like, eyes. And that's how the movie finishes up. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that point. So, Lena goes on and is to find this hole that's in this lighthouse. So she goes into the hole. She starts going through this, like, cave-like hole. And all of a sudden meets Ventress. And so I guess Ventress, like, something was like talking to her, and now like it's inside of her, and it's coming out. And so Ventress all of a sudden is to like burst out of her mouth this light, and then all of a sudden she I guess possibly like in a slow way explodes with light in a very slow way, where all of a sudden all this light and all these things just start coming out of nowhere, and Ventress dies from her inner explosion, I guess. A very slow but explosion. So all of a sudden we go on, and Lena is to like have a drop of blood that kind of just floats into the air. Floats in the air, and all of a sudden is to start to become another Lena. Slowly but surely, but it looks like it's a very metallic looking like character, or like a a metal like alien. So Lena is to run back to the door of this lighthouse. I want to keep saying White House. Lighthouse. So it's technically white, like the inside of it and the outside of it are white, but it's a lighthouse. So Lena is to see this metal being like right in front of her as she is to go back to where this door was. So we have Lena trying to figure out this thing, like figure out its movements, and this thing is trying to copy her, but in like a mirror-like way. So Lena is consistently trying to figure out how she can make it to this door without this thing like following her. And when she goes on and tries to run to the door, the mirrored self of her is to just kind of push her against this door, keeping her there to where she can't move. To where at some point Lena is to feel so crushed that she goes on and starts falling, and then falls over. Like Lena at one point is to use this camera stand and to punch this mirror itself of hers, and it punches back. And so Lena ends up consistently getting knocked out by this thing. And so she gets up and she finds the grenade that Kane had once from before, and is to give this grenade to this mirror itself as it's starting to look more and more like her. Lena puts the grenade in this thing's hand, runs to the door, gets out of there, and then the mirrored version of herself is to go on and set ablaze every part of this like bubbled universe. And so it seems that Lena at some point could go on and get out of here somehow or another to meet up with Lomax to like be debriefed about this whole story. So Lomax is mentioning like, well, yeah, it seems from that lighthouse everything had just gone on to turn into ash. And so whatever they could have like uncovered or recovered, because they sent another team out there, and it seems that they had gone on and realized that everything had just been ashed out or wiped out. So Lomax is also mentioning to Lena that they only had X amount of food for this mission, and Lena was gone for way longer than what food supply that they had. And so Lomax is like, well, like, how did you eat anything? What did you eat? Like, how did you survive for that length of time? And Lena's like, well, I don't know. It just felt like we were in there for days, but I guess we were gone for a lot longer than that. So yeah, so like after Lena is done talking with Lomax and like just debriefing Lomax about everything that she is to go on and see and do and whatever, Lena goes back to meet up with Kane. And since now Lena has to be like quarantined for the rest of her existence, as well as Kane is to go on and be quarantined for the rest of his existence, because being into that bubble, like they're not really sure like what's going to happen with these two characters, but it seems that at the end of it, we're to just have these two characters just hug one another and the movie just ends. And we're like, so yeah, so with that said, hopefully I've covered Annihilation for the most point. I didn't cover the science stuff, and probably I kind of rushed through a lot of this movie, or I didn't tell it the way it perfectly goes into. But that's how I do things. So with that said, I think I'm just going to get out of here so I can go on and do other things. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.